I am thrilled to bring to the show this morning Gabriella Hoffman. Good morning. How are you, ma'am? Welcome to Common Sense America. I'm Eden Hill.
Nice to meet you, Eden. Good to be on with you.
Oh, thank you. It's so nice to meet you as well. I love young voices, always bringing young voices to the show, and I'm glad to finally have another young voice contributor. So thank you. I've been teeing you up, and our audience is nationwide, but also local Eastern North Carolina. And I know when we were discussing some of the ideas of what we were talking about the show, I really would like to focus in on some of the Senate races, especially being here in North Carolina, but also having worked for United States Senator in Pennsylvania. I would love to talk about Oz and Fetterman and then also the Beasley Budd race here as well. And just to kind of kick off, because we are a week out. And so I would love your thoughts as a town hall contributor as well. I saw your article yesterday that came out, and I saw some of your commentary on Fox 5 and the DC affiliate. So I would really love your thoughts on what is your analysis of the Republicans taking back the Senate? Do you think Pennsylvania and North Carolina has the opportunity to take back the Senate with those two seats alone?
I think you're looking at the assessment of Senate races. A lot of prognosticators were saying, well, it's a toss-up in terms of whether Republicans will retake that chamber. It's obviously a given that the House is going to go in Republicans' favor. But more and more increasingly, we hear conversations, or rather discussion on cable news sites, on social media, and polling that shows that Republicans could pick up as many as 53 Senate seats. Some are even saying 56, which is quite a guess. I would think that 53 would be probably likely if Republicans are able to pull it off in that. But at least 51 seats is what we're hearing in conversation now. So I wouldn't be surprised to see that if things go in Republicans' favor, which it looks to be even on the Senate side too, because people recognize that the Senate controls many levers. It's getting through the presidential nominations and approvals. The Senate carries a lot of weight, much like the House does with appropriations. And so people see that maybe as a way to stop President Biden's agenda in areas that they disagree, having people to stop or put a check on it would come likely through the Senate. Because even though it will be good to have a check on the administration, they won't be able to pass legislation to stop him. He's going to use his presidential authority to block legislation. So a Senate could be powerful. And I think voters increasingly see that as well, to at least stop some of the bleeding, whether it comes to presidential appointments.
No, I appreciate you sharing that. Talk to us about, I'm not able to get the full article because I'm not a townhall.com subscription holder, but I was reading the headline of your article yesterday, and you wrote, "Dear Democrats, civility is a two-way street." Talk to us about what you are seeing in this regard, knowing that you live in the great state of Virginia. Youngkin is your governor, who I absolutely respect and admire. I'm really glad to see Virginia back in that state frame of mind, if you will. So talk to us about the article and what kind of responses are you getting, and what inspired you to write that? Is it because that we are living in such a lack of civilized environment in this campaign and this midterm synopsis, or is it more because we've just been seeing this ever since Biden got in?
I think I've been working in politics for the better part of a decade, since I was in college. And I've just observed many on the left, they're never really held to account for any charged rhetoric that they use. So it's okay for them to say, yes, let's get rid of these extremists, and to malign people who don't necessarily have extreme views. They may take some crazy outlier from Twitter and say every Republican believes this.
Right.
But anytime, Republicans are pretty quick to condemn and rebuke violence. I think all Republicans, including my governor, Glenn Youngkin, were very swift to condemn the violence enacted on Speaker of the House Pelosi's husband. I think it's no question. But apologies are never enough for many on the left, especially in the commentariat class. And they are not really apologetic for any of their supposed surrogates whenever they enact violence. And I hate to whatabout. I hate that we're in this whatabouting of comparison and contrast. But you see many people in response to the attack on Paul Pelosi say, well, the attacks on Republicans are personal. They're not political. We see that level, that accusation rather, charged on Senator Rand Paul, who
Yep.
suffered a horrible, horrible
Yes.
attack
Yes,
because
he
of his
did.
political leanings from his neighbor.
Yes,
He
he did.
admitted it in court. There's documentation confirming that it was a politically motivated attack. You saw the would-be assassin of Justice Brett Kavanaugh, someone who wanted to assassinate him over his beliefs as well. And you saw, I live maybe within 10 miles of where the Alexandria shooting took place that almost took the life of Congressman Steve Scalise and injured several other Republicans.
Yes.
So we've seen Democrats not tone down the rhetoric. They keep calling for civility, and then they like to or rather demonize half of the country as extremists, as fascists. And when you start to use those terms just casually, it really reduces actual instances of fascism, of extremism, and really desensitizes the public to real instances of those, of people who could be truly categorized as fascists and extremists. So I think that's why you see the voters, independents and Democrats included, start to move away even from the Democrats, saying we're tired of this rhetoric. We see Republicans apologize. We know that Republicans are not these characterizations that are leveled on them. And I saw a Republican, a former spokesperson of the RNC from I think the Bush years. Nobody in my age generation who's involved in politics really remembers this guy. He's not really prominent. He goes on Fox News on occasion. Doug Heye, I think is his name. And he's like, well, I was the one behind Fire Pelosi rhetoric, and I am to blame. The rhetoric we used is to blame for the attack. It's like, no, the individual, the assailant who was the attacker is solely to blame for the rhetoric. And we could even point to on the right accusations of rhetoric that the left uses that inspired attacks on Republicans. We could do that whatabouting all we want. But Democrats, again, are never held to account. The president, we saw back in September, deliver that very kind of ominous speech. Othering and demonizing half the country, and then he calls for civility. It seems insincere. And that's why, like I said, I think voters are responding to these so-called accusations, these unproven claims, and saying, we see for ourselves that Democrats are not toning down the rhetoric. They're proposing extreme policies that make it expensive to fill up your gas tanks, to power your home, to buy groceries. And they're seeing where the real extremism lies, and it's not with Republicans in this instance.
Yeah. Well, that goes to your point yesterday when I saw you do the Fox News, the Fox DC affiliate hit yesterday. And, I loved hearing your commentary. It is those things. It is, can you fill up the gas tank? Can't you put food on the kitchen table? Can you? And people are having to weigh what they need and what they cannot do. And the economic climate, I believe it was you that said, we are going into a recession. There is no two ways about it. So does that say, is that a predictive index of, okay, we are going to have a red wave? Or is it more of people saying enough is enough is enough? I mean, Obama's out there, Oprah's out there. So what? So what? They are not drawing in the crowds that Trump draws in for the MAGA rallies, the Save America rallies. They are not drawing in those same crowds. So it is, at the end of the day, is it truly a red wave? Or is it Americans waking up and saying, I have common sense. I'm going to vote because I am fed up, and I'm going to vote in that regard. Is that what you're seeing more of? Because that's what I feel. That's what I hear from people when I bring on people. I bring on, candidates. I bring on those who are fighting for parental rights. I bring on, all of those types of people, and people are angry and they're ready to fight back.
Two points that I want to make to the crowd size and the unveiling of surrogates. We have to be careful about crowd sizes being a predictor of voter turnout. That didn't work in the former president's favor, unfortunately. But if you're also drawing out the surrogates, President Obama, under his 8 years in office, was responsible for the biggest loss of Democratic seats on the state and federal level, over 1,000 seats, 1,042 seats. So I wouldn't, if I were a Democratic candidate, I wouldn't want to be campaigning alongside someone who may be a popular figure on the left. But as a political legacy kind of hallmark, he is responsible for Democrats being in the precarious situation they were going into 2016, 2017, when the Trump administration started. So you look on back on that, and they don't want to campaign with President Biden. I remember they brought out all the surrogates for Governor Youngkin's campaign to campaign against him, to support Terry McAuliffe. And it didn't work in Terry McAuliffe's favor. So to me, it seems like if they're unveiling all these people in what are supposed to be reliably blue areas, including let's say North Carolina, which is competitive. I wouldn't call North Carolina a blue state. I think it's still a red, purple, leaning on red state because it just looks like the metrics favor Republicans there, just given more people moving there away from high taxation states.
Yep.
And that's why if it wasn't competitive in Pennsylvania, to your point about the Oz versus Fetterman race, they wouldn't be bringing President Biden. They would be bringing Obama, the first lady, others to Pennsylvania if it was a shoo-in for Fetterman.
Right.
So to me, it seems like not a desperation move, but it seems like they are panicking. They're not admitting it because Democrats, like my panelist on the Fox 5 DC panel, after the fact, she was trying to debate with me. She was a nice individual. I didn't want to get into any arguments with her after our appearance, but they're really confident. They think that nothing will go wrong, that everyone loves their plans. Although, and it's not just Republicans, you know, exercising things on Twitter, political muscle, things of that sort. Polling is reflective of this. You look at where the voters are, like I said, spanning all partisan lines. It's not just Republicans. Independents, especially, are leaning towards the GOP. We see that in North Carolina and Pennsylvania increasingly, and even some Democrats too. To paraphrase my governor, he was saying, I think on the campaign trail recently, Virginia is the headwaters from which the red wave will take place from. And I love that. As someone who goes fishing, I was like, headwaters, this kind of analogy. This was beautiful.
It's great.
And it is true.
Great. Yes.
And I see a lot of mirroring between what happened in Virginia in our gubernatorial election happening even on a greater level. Different issues certainly are motivating voters in New York, which could be potentially very competitive. And in Oregon, crime is the largest issue, followed by the economy, inflation. In most of the swing states that we're seeing, especially in North Carolina and Pennsylvania, I think inflation, economics are largely driving people. So it varies, although within the top 5, I think people are very concerned about the economy, crime, energy prices. Those are pocketbook issues. Those are the top of mind issues that concern everyone and not just Republicans. And I think Democrats are going to have a reckoning, politically speaking, because they are alienating even those who are in their kind of periphery, their own voters and independents who kind of swing back and forth between Republicans, but may be inclined to vote Democrat. So if they're going to be surprised by it, they shouldn't, because all the metrics are pointing to even their most avowed supporters starting to sour on them as well.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. I love the fishing part, and I'm going to sidebar for a second. We're not going to talk politics for like 2 minutes. My husband is an avid fisherman, recreational and then also commercial. And, you know, we love the beautiful waters of Eastern North Carolina. It's refreshing, it's restorative. And especially for those who have left the northern states to come down here, they are looking more for freedom. They don't want to live in an authoritarian mentality. But the fishing aspect, I do want to ask you this. There's something so refreshing about fishing. You get to eat what you catch. You do not go to the store and buy it from China. You do not get it in the frozen section. And when I don't know, you did not know this. I ran for state house in the primary for earlier this year. And one of the big things that I focused on was fighting for the fishermen, because North Carolina is really putting a lot more rules and regs, so they have a more limited time to get anything. And my biggest concern, and I saw Sarah Palin say something very similar on her campaign, it is, we want to support the local. We want to support having fishermen. We want to support the fresh food, the fresh shrimp. We want to support that and not continue supporting China or wherever else it comes in the freezer section. And so, and you're in many ventures of fishing, and have you, you know, again, I did sway a little political, but what has it been like for you in Virginia? And just know it's that amazing feeling that I just caught my food and I get to have this, and I don't have to go to the store and be dependent on it coming from, you know, the truckers that are bringing it in from another location. What is it like for you in Virginia and being able to fish? Are you more recreational? Is it more of a, you know, just every once in a while during the fishing season? What is it like for you? But what have you seen with regards to being able to eat your own fish, or do you catch and release?
I practice both put in, take, and catch and release, and I fish year round. Actually, you can do that here on the East Coast, and much like North Carolina, I like to do both inshore fishing and coastal fishing. I do a lot of fly fishing for trout in the mountains, and I have yet to go to North Carolina. It's on my place of fishing destinations to go to. But on the commercial side, a little bit teaming on the politics of it, there was actually a Department of Commerce rule. I think comment period ended yesterday. Your listeners, if they are involved in commercial fishing or even recreational fishing, usually sometimes those two interests kind of butt heads over
Yes, they do.
regulation.
Yes, they do.
And there's actually one instance now where they're finding some commonality, actually over a couple things. But the Department of Commerce has a vessel rule to limit your boat speed if you have a vessel between 35 to 65 feet long.
Okay.
And that could restrict potentially in our region, in the mid-Atlantic, and for those of you in kind of the South Atlantic, it's like 6 different regions. It affects most of the East Coast, this proposed vessel rule. So between like 4 to 6 months of the year, if this vessel rule goes uncontested and goes fully into effect, it could limit your opportunities to to commute by transportation if you're using boat to commute between the little islands. If you're a recreational fisher who goes offshore, if your vessel fits into that weight and not category, you will be severely impacted. And in Massachusetts, where I've seen a case study kind of play out, in Martha's Vineyard, interestingly enough, that if this vessel rule were to go into effect, it would take the commute time from 2 hours round trip to about 6 hours round trip. And so it would have that same effect, this vessel rule, on any commuter kind of vessels. For recreational, if it's going to become no-go zones for people to go fishing. And so fishing is not supposed to be political, but a lot of people do make it political with environmental restrictions. Very draconian restrictions. We should have basics. Follow the laws. Don't harvest over your limit if you're a commercial fisherman. If you're a recreational angler, know the catch limit, know the creel limit. Of course, those are very important so we can steward those public resources and enjoy them for catching or for catching and releasing, whatever your preference is. I do both, like I said. So you do have to worry. And this rule, like I said, affects Virginia, affects North Carolina, will affect basically Maine to Florida or coastal Georgia.
Right.
So you have to be extremely aware because these are kind of sleeper rules that are put out there that most of the media doesn't really pay attention to, except for a few written publications rather. And so your listeners need to be aware. But in terms of me personally, I had a very good, successful trip in the Chesapeake Bay region where the Atlantic Ocean meets the Bay. It's a really nice confluence, and we can catch cobia and red drum. Those are some of my favorite fish now to catch. I've caught juvenile red drum before in Florida, but never really had exposure much except for one trip a few years ago where I missed a red drum. But I caught a really nice trophy red drum that was a citation fish, and any fish over or exceeding or under the 18 to 26 inch limit has to be released. So I caught a 45 incher. That was really nice to do and have a citation in Virginia's Marine Resources Commission. So kind of in the record books for catching a nice fish like that. And then I was able to catch and keep cobia. You're allowed to keep 2 cobia over 40 inches a day. That is a really delicious meat. And I think it's important to do that. Fishing is not always a guarantor whether or not you're going to get fresh meat. I've had good days and bad days on the water. Anytime I can take home fish, I do. But certainly for an offshore or kind of sport fishing trip, I would like to, especially with what you're paying. Of course, you want to get kind of a return on your investment for that. It's like I said, it's not always a guarantor, but if you're investing so much for the trip, you should get some return on investment with it.
Oh, most definitely. Most definitely. Well, Gabrielle, I'm realizing the time is right up on Common Sense America. And what I'd love to do is have you come back as the waters are getting cooler here and the fish are coming down here. I would love to invite you down here whenever you have some free time. I would love to bring you back. Let's talk more fishing, but let's talk after the elections as well. I would love to hear your powerful analysis on, and if we will actually know all of the winners on election night. I'm kind of wondering that. I'll just put that little teaser out there. What are your thoughts really quickly with 2 minutes left?
Yeah, I would be happy to come on, and I appreciate the invitation. I actually may ping an idea your way about, I think you guys also have the proposals for offshore wind, and I'm looking to cover opposition in the coastal communities to offshore wind because of just the various impacts and how it actually is not really a cost-saving measure. But if any of your commercial fishermen want to talk to me, I would love to have them featured in a forthcoming Conservation Nation video series episode that I do. So we could explore that if you're interested. And I would love to come down and fish offshore. I know North Carolina has great offerings, and in your mountains, absolutely too. With trout, that's a little tricky because it is a bit of a hike, but coastal North
It is.
Carolina is probably more feasible.
It is. It is more feasible. If you're in Alexandria area, you're only about 5 hours from where we are in coastal.
Give or take.
So, yeah, but I will put you in touch with some commercial people. I know some
Please.
great people for you to talk to, so we'll make that happen. I'll talk to you offline. Gabriella Hoffman, contributor for Young Voices, townhall.com. Check her out. Go to Twitter and Instagram at Gabby_Hoffman. Thank you so much for coming on Common Sense America. Have a great Tuesday. Happy November 1st.
Happy November 1st. Thank you, Eden. Nice to talk to you.
Nice to talk to you too. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye. And for all those who are tuning in, it is 9:57 a.m. Eastern time. Oh my goodness, what a fantastic show we've had today. That was Gabriella Hoffman. I hope you guys will check her out. And, I love the fact that she is such a fisher woman. I love it. That is awesome. So we're going to bring her back. I can't wait to talk more commercial fishing. She's going to be a wealth of information for the great state of North Carolina also.